Yesterday we looked at inductive and deductive reasoning. Today we're going to look at writing more function rules like we did yesterday, but today our function rules are going to be more leaning towards quadratic. I am going to throw some linear in there so that you learn to figure out when they're linear, when they're quadratic, but we're really going to focus on, during the lesson today, writing quadratic functions. So our target is to write a quadratic function. So first of all, we need to figure out how will I know if it's quadratic versus linear. So here I have a set of data. I have a set of data, just plain data. Let's not worry about what it's representing. I need to know, is this linear? Is it quadratic? What do I do? So I'm going to do what we did yesterday. I'm going to look through the pattern. How is this growing? How is it changing? I notice from 4 to 7, that increases by 3. 7 to 12, it's an increase of 5. From 12 to 19, it's an increase of 7. Then we have an increase of 9. Finally, an increase of 11. Now, first of all, because that's not a constant increase, I know that it's not linear. But what I do recognize is that I do have a constant increase the second time around. The second time I do have a constant increase. If I had a consistent increase the first time around, my function would be linear. But because that doesn't happen until the second tier, then I know my function is going to be quadratic. If it didn't happen to the third time, then my function would be cubic. If it happened to the fourth time, it would be to the fourth power, fifth time, it would be to the fifth power, and so on. So this is how I know whether it's going to be linear or quadratic. And really, that's all we're going to ever deal with is linear and quadratic. So now that I know my function is quadratic, what do I do with it? So here's that same data again. Here's our same data. I know it's quadratic, but what do I do with it? What we're going to do is all of our data we're going to deal with in our calculator. So on your graphing calculator, I'm going to walk you through the process of coming up with that function. Now on the next slide, I'm going to switch back and forth for a second. On this next slide, I have for you the button process of how to do this on your calculator, but I'm still going to walk you through this. So don't panic if you're not following along. This is the process here. What you need to do first, second, and third on your calculator in order to do what's called quadratic regression. I'm going to walk you through with our data, and then we'll go from there. So we are going to use this data here. We are going to use this data, and we are going to do this with our graphing calculators. So go ahead and take your graphing calculators and go ahead and turn them on. And the first thing we want to do is we want to clear all the information out of the calculator that's already there, because it could have information already stored in the lists. So the first thing we want to do is clear all the lists. To do this, I need to hit the second button, which is the blue button, the plus sign, and then option number 4 is clear all lists. And then I'll go back to my main menu. It says clear all lists, then I need to hit enter. And then it'll say done. So all my lists are cleared. Now we're ready to input our data values. To input my data values, I need to hit my stat button. My stat button is in the second row down. Then my second row, third button over. I'm going to hit stat, and I want to edit. So you can hit number 1 or you can hit enter. Now notice mine says list 1 and list 2. I have list 1 and list 2. In list 1, that's where I'm going to put all my n values, or f's, depending on how you want to call it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to type in 1, hit enter. 2, hit enter. 3, enter. 4, enter. 5, enter. 6, and enter. Next, I want to go over to list 2. So I'm going to use my arrow keys. I'm going to go over to list 2. That's where I need to type my f of n, or my y value. So I need to type in 4 and hit enter. 7 and hit enter. 12, enter. 19, enter. 28, enter. 39, and enter. So take a second here, double check that you typed everything correctly. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on column 1, or list 1. My second list of 4, 7, 12, 19, 28, and 39. Once I'm secure that my lists are good, what I need to do is now calculate my linear regression. To do that, I'm ready to hit stat again. I'm going to go back to that stat button. This time I'm ready to calculate. So I'm going to use my arrow buttons to go over to calculate. And if you look, option number 5 is quadratic regression. I'm going to go down to option number 5. It's going to go back to my main screen and say quadratic regression, and I'm going to hit enter. Now notice this says ax squared plus bx plus c, a equals 1, b equals 2.7, e negative 12, and c equals 3. I'm going to capture a picture of that screen here. I'm going to copy it and go back to our notes. And I'm just going to paste that right in our notes here. All right. So this is our data. Here's what we get. I know it's a little blurry, but let's think about what this means. So it's giving us our A, B, and C values. Right, so I know this means 1x squared. So we have f of x equals 1x squared, but I know I don't write 1x squared. I'll just write x squared. Think about this number here. This is scientific notation. 2.7 times 10 to the negative 12. That's really 0. That's basically 0. So it's trying to, the calculator can't handle it perfectly, but it's saying 0. So we don't have an x term. And then we have, for our c, we have a positive 3. So our function rule is x squared plus 3. Again, on this next page are the steps for your calculator. The gray, all the gray ones here, those are your buttons that you press. I tried to lay that out for you. Here's another example for you. So you're going to start over again. Start with clearing all your lists and put your data values and then doing your calculate your quadratic regression. So take a minute here. The substitute is going to pause the video and give you a minute to go ahead and do your regression. Go ahead and put your list, find your function rule. And when you're ready, she will go ahead, or he or she, I'm sorry, will go ahead and restart the video. Okay, hopefully you've had a couple minutes here to go ahead and do your calculation. When you do your regression, this is the screen that you should see. So your function rule should give you negative 2x squared minus 2. Again, we have a 0 for our b value, so our x term is non-existent. That is our function rule. So that's looking at raw data. The next problem I want to look at is often referred to as the handshake problem. It says each of the 30 people at a party shook hands with everyone else. How many handshakes were there all together? So we have it started here. If there was one person at the party, we had 0 handshakes. If there were 2 people at the party, so let's envision 2 people, only 1 handshake was exchanged. Okay, so 2 people, 1 handshake. If we had 3 people at a party, there's 1 handshake here, 1 handshake here, 1 handshake here. Everybody has exchanged a handshake. So there are 3 handshakes total. How about 4 people at a party? 4 people at a party. 1, 2, 3, 4 people at a party. So let's start with this first person in the upper left-hand corner. They would shake hands with this 1, 2, 3. Let's go to the next person. 4, 5, 6. So there are 4 people, that means there would be 6 handshakes. Okay, well this could get difficult to count. So can we use our regression here, our function rules to help us out? Because really, I want to know, what if there are 30 people at the party? So I'm recognizing that this is not going to be linear. I recognize here this is an increase of 1, this is an increase of 2, this is an increase of 3. I recognize it's not linear. I recognize it's going to be quadratic. So I want to know what is our function rule that can help us, because I want to know if there are 30 people, how many handshakes are going to happen altogether. So let's go back to our graphing calculator. Let's go back to our graphing calculator, and we're going to input this data. And we don't have a lot of data, but we can input this. So we're going back to our graphing calculator. We need to clear our lists. Okay, I'm going to clear all my lists here. I have my list cleared. I want to input my list. I'm going to stat and edit. So we looked at 1 person at the party, 2, 3, and 4. For 1 person, there were 0 handshakes. 2 people, we had 1 handshake. For 3 people, we had 3 handshakes. For 4 people, we had 6 handshakes. So I've input my data. What little data I have, I've input that. Now I'm ready to do my quadratic regression. So I'm going to go back to stat. I'm going to go over to calculate. Now the quadratic regression. I'm going to hit enter. And here we have it. So let's capture that again. I'll paste it back in our notes. So our function rule. This time we have an a and a b value but no c value. So we have f of x equals 0.5x squared minus 0.5x. Okay, so there's my function rule, but I'm still not done because I want to know, what if there are 30 people at the party? I'm trying to find f of 30. So I need to go back and plug that in. So I need 0.5 times 30 squared minus 0.5 times 30. So I want to evaluate that function at 30. So I have 0.5 times 30 squared. That gives me 450 minus 0.5 times 30, that is 15. So 450 minus 15 is 435, which means if there are 30 people at a party and everybody shakes hands exactly 1 time, there would be 435 handshakes. It's a lot of germs. All right, this is what you're going to be doing today. On your homework, there are going to be some functions that are linear, some that are quadratic. Keep in mind though, if you do a quadratic regression and you have a linear function, your a value will end up being 0. But if you have a linear function, it's much faster to do what we did yesterday. Look for that common difference. Work backwards to get your y-intercept. That is much faster. So once you get done with the notes, the substitute will hand out to you the worksheet. That's what you're going to work on next. That is what is due tomorrow. Tomorrow at the beginning of class, we'll do some practice problems. We'll review everything from sections 1 through 4, and then the second half of class, we will be taking a quiz.